Okay, welcome to another edition of The Amazing Adventure Discovering the New Me. This is study number 3, the book of Mark. We're doing just a 3 study on the book of Mark. I did it in my Sunday school class at church with a couple other teachers. I had 3 of the sections. Section today is Mark 11:1 through chapter 12, verse 12. And you can read that on your own. Read the whole book on your own. It's a short book. You read it in one sitting, 16 chapters. Again, today we're just going over these few verses here, and it starts out with Jesus telling his disciples to go into this other area, find this colt that's tied up, and if they ask why you're taking the colt, he says, "Just tell them the Lord needs it," and they would let him go. So he's prophesying what's going to happen. They go to the other area. They find the colt, just like Jesus said. The people said, "Why are you taking the colt?" And they said, "The Lord has need of it." And he said, okay, they gave him permission to take the colt. So that was for the triumphal entry, Palm Sunday, which is coming up. And so Jesus gets on the colt and goes into Jerusalem, and people are laying their garments out before him, palm branches and the whole Palm Sunday deal. He comes in the triumphal procession as a king. He is the king, but they thought he was coming as the king to overthrow Rome, but it wasn't his intent. So he comes in, he looks around the temple, then he goes away back to Bethany, and then that's in verse 11. Then you see, then they come back the next day, and they see this fig tree in the distance, and they're hungry, so they think Jesus says maybe it has figs on it. He goes and sees no figs. It was out of season anyway, but he still makes a point. He curses the tree, and the tree dies and withers. And then it's kind of another section here with the temple comes in here in between, and then we come back to the fig tree in verse 20 to 21. So they call it a sandwich technique, where you have the fig tree here in 12 and 14, and in 20, 21. And then when they come back, we'll just jump over to verse 20 here. They see that the fig tree had withered up from the roots up in one day. It was amazing that the fig tree had died that quickly, but that's the power of Jesus, and that's what happened. And the point there was that I think he was trying to teach them that the people that he's coming to preach to, if they're not accepting him, if they're not receiving him, if they're rejecting him, and they were looking, the powers that be were looking to seize him and to kill him. And he said, that's dead. There's death there, and he's coming to bring life. And then we see he comes back into the temple in verses 15 through 19, and then also has another sandwich technique where it jumps ahead to 27 to 33. But we see where he comes in and just turns over the tables. He says in verse 17 here, he says, "My house shall be called a house of prayer for all nations." So it came for all people, and he's making a point of that. It's not to be a den of robbers, as he calls it, and because they were spying and selling. And then he continues that point on down here, that in verses 27 through 33, they say, what authority do you have to do these kind of things? And he said, and they were trying to trap him. They asked him a question, and he wouldn't, fall into their trap, of course, because he could read through it, he could see through it, and they wanted to know, if was John the Baptist, they were wondering about John the Baptist, and he said in verse 30, "Was the baptism of John from heaven or from men?" He answered me. So he really turned the table and asked them a question. They couldn't answer it, so he said, "No, neither will I tell you what authority I do these things." And then we jump into, and we have a little section here on faith. It's kind of tricky. We're kind of bouncing back and forth, but back up to verses 22 through 26, he talks about if you believe and you want to cast this mountain into the sea, if you believe, it'll happen. He's just talking about faith there. And then also forgiveness. He said, if you don't forgive, neither will your heavenly Father forgive you. It's kind of the old covenant teaching, which he came to teach. And of course, in his blood, there's the forgiveness of sins for all time, past, present, future. And so that's the new covenant that he was bringing in. And then we see in chapter 12 another whole story. That's how these Gospels are written. And you can compare these. Go back and read Matthew, Luke, and John, and compare these stories. Some of the same stories are in those different Gospels as well, the four Gospels. And Mark is the one that's probably the shortest Gospel. It's a quick hitting Gospel. And this gives a perspective that we wouldn't get in some of the other Gospels. So it brings it all together. All of them together give you the full picture of what Jesus was all about. And we see in the story, the vine growers, they were, the owner said, "Hey, let's go get some of the produce." And so he sent a slave. They beat up the slave when they came. Then he sent another slave, and then that one they beat up and wounded him in the head, and then treated him shamefully. And then another one, they kept doing that, and they killed some. And then he said, "Well, let me just send my son. They'll respect him, and they'll give him the produce, and everything will be fine." So Jesus was just portraying his role as the Father sending the Son. And of course, they killed the Son. They thought, "Hey, we'll take the inheritance if we kill the Son," and it didn't work out too well for them. The Father, the owner of the vineyard, in verse 9 in chapter 12, he says that he will come and destroy the vine growers, and he will give the vineyard to others. And that's basically what the gospel is. He's if you don't receive Christ, the ones that destroyed him, they are going to be destroyed by the Father. You read Revelation, in the end, his wrath's coming, judgment's coming. But and then he gives it to others, like he always says that, if you didn't want to come into the banquet, go out in the highways and byways and open the doors and bring whoever will want to come in and eat. So it's a free gift. It's a free open table. It's a free open party, really, but you have to receive it. A gift is here, but if you don't receive the gift, and then you don't actually own it and have it. But when you do, you have Christ in your life, and that's a lot of what Jesus is teaching here. And I encourage you again to go read this and read it with others if you can. And if you like this video, make sure you like it. Hit the subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell if you want to get the one for next time. We'll continue back with our normal series of books of the Bible. I think we're in the book of James next. So hope you like this, and hope you have a blessed day. God bless you.